Okay, my screen says the webinar has started, and I can never tell who's out there until I see what's going on in the chat with everyone. Hi, I'm Jeff from St. Albert Public Library. I'm a library assistant here, and yeah, tonight I'm just going to be assisting in delivering Canada Reads to you all. So we have our amazing panel here. I know you're making noise for them in the chat, so let's hear that. If you want to talk to us or chat to Louisa from the library, you just change your chat settings from everyone, or no, sorry, from host and panelists, because that's probably going to be the default to everyone. So do that, say hi. I'll give you a minute to like file in. Emojis, yes, they're there. Okay, we're rolling. Best way to view tonight, in the top right-hand corner of your screen, depends if you're on like a tablet or a desktop computer, laptop, whatever, there should be like a little grid button. Click that, that's your view button. You want to change it to gallery just so you see all of us smiling back at you. If you have the other one, it's just gonna like cycle through who's talking. So it'll be madness. So let's stay away from that. But yeah, I think we're all ready here. Let's get this going. So we're excited to gather here on Métis Region 4 and Treaty 6 territory, the land of many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit, whose footsteps have marked it for centuries. This is a storied land, so it's fitting that tonight we celebrate books with the power to challenge us to reflect on community and who we are as Canadians. These are also very entertaining books, and we're lucky to put together just an exquisite collection of community celebrities to battle it out for your viewing pleasure and to also claim their book as Canada's next great read. So you see them, let's hear from them. Let's meet tonight's panel. I'm gonna start with Brett. Brett Lamoureux has had her nose in a book since she could read and continues to always have one handy. Starting in museum programming and interpretation during university, 10 years and thousands of tours have passed, and she can't imagine doing anything else. Brett has recently moved back home to Alberta from a 2-year stint in Quebec and is currently the program coordinator at the Musée Héritage Museum right here in St. Albert. How's it going, Brett?
It's going good. I did my book workout today, so you know.
Your book workout today. Can you show us the book you will be defending, so to speak, and what is that book?
So this is Life in the City of Dirty Water.
All right.
By Clayton Thomas-Muller, and it's a memoir on healing.
Okay. Well, good luck to you, Brett. I know you've never been shy about saying that you want to be Selena Lawyer. Selena Lawyer is a 2-time winner of Canada Reads, so this might bring you one step closer. Tonight might bring you closer to being her, so wish you luck.
Thank you.
Julian Dicastry is retired from St. Albert Catholic Schools, where he served as a teacher, counselor, and ending his career as an administrator. No longer punching the clock with a real job, Julian volunteers as a member of the chaplaincy team at Edmonton Remand Center, as the community coordinator for Grandin Faith and Light, as a board member for a girls' orphanage in Uganda, and serving as the coordinator of a lay association. A passion of Julian's is drumming, dating back to when he got his first kit in grade 8, through to playing with the odd geriatric group over the past decade. Extra shout out to his wife Maria and his neighbors for their commitment to endure. We mean enjoy his practice sessions over the years. So welcome, Julian. You're coming at us live from New York. How's it going in the Big Apple?
Very good. Thank you very much, Jeff. It sounds pretty, you know, that little musical interlude that you think I'm playing some big gig, but I'm actually playing a gig with a 2-year-old and a 7-year-old grandchildren and loving every second of it. So it's not really bright lights, but it's soul filling. And my book this evening is What Strange Paradise by Omar El Akkad. And it's the most heart-wrenching spotlight on the refugee situation that we hear time and time again in the news. And as Omar will say, we quickly forget. So that is my book, and I'm excited to share it with you.
Awesome. We're excited to hear more about it. Good luck, Julian. Kelsey Robbins is a member of the 2S LGBTQ plus community who has worked in various social and community service organizations across the country over the past 10 years. Kelsey is currently an outreach worker for Out Loud St. Albert and has a serious passion for advocating for and providing services and supports to members of their own community. In their spare time, Kelsey enjoys spending it with their partner, Steph, and dog, Shadow, and regularly loves to dive into good books. Welcome tonight, Kelsey. How's it going?
I am so excited to be here. I can't even tell you. I am completely honored to be a celebrity panelist, if you will. And I am here defending Five Little Indians by Michelle Good. It is absolutely amazing, totally heart-wrenching, and I'm just really excited to tell everyone about it.
Awesome. Yeah, you are a celebrity, and maybe if Shadow jumps into the screen, we'll go viral tonight. Who knows? Yeah. Okay. Next up, Natalie Jolie. Oh, and good luck to you, or Kelsey as well. Natalie Jolie was raised in St. Albert and then lived in both Edmonton and New Zealand before returning home to St. Albert, where she was first elected to City Council in 2017. In addition to her role on council, she volunteers as a photographer with Now I Lay Me Down to Sleep, an organization that provides bereavement portraiture to families experiencing the loss of an infant. She also recently completed an MBA through Athabasca University. Welcome, Natalie.
Hi, I'm delighted to be here.
Yeah.
I don't know if you want me and Ray in a room together again, but I'll take it.
Well, yeah, no, we're kind of in a virtual room, but yeah, no, I'm experiencing a lot of trash. You should see some of the things Ray sent to my phone, but
I bet.
Yeah, no, just nasty stuff. But yeah, how could you say that about someone like you? The bereavement photos, reading about that, how did you come to find that organization and work with them? That's so touching.
Yeah, I back in, oh gosh, when I was pregnant with my second daughter, so 2008, a friend lost their infant son to SIDS, and so I was put in charge of making a photo thing for his funeral. And in my, you Google the what do I do, and I found the organization, and so I worked as a photographer professionally, and eventually kind of it took me a few years to be able to do it, but really touching work to be invited, into a hospital room on the worst day of a parent's life. So, yeah.
Respect. Can you tell us about the book you're defending tonight?
So I have Scarborough by Catherine Hernandez. Absolutely beautiful, a series of stories out of Toronto. So I look forward about saying more in a moment.
Okay, thank you and good luck. And joining us right on time, Ray Watkins. Ray is a 20-year resident of St. Albert. He has a Bachelor of Arts Honors, Geography and Urban Studies from University of Windsor, and works as a land use planner and developer with 35 years of experience working with municipalities, building communities. A talented photographer, his portraits of daily life and people he just met share the same intimacy and care as his portraits of family members and friends. I added that, Ray, you're welcome. Ray has worked in the public, private, and not-for-profit sectors and was a member of St. Albert City Council from 2017 to 2021. Welcome, Ray. How's it going tonight?
Going great. I'm honored to be here. 99% of the reading I do is nonfiction, so I had opportunity to read a fiction book by Esi Edugyan called Washington Black, and it's a Giller Prize Award winner. Here's a picture of the author. I'm going to show you a picture of the author. She's a beautiful young lady there. And so, yeah, I'm very proud to defend the book, and I'm happy to be honored and happy to be here tonight on this program.
Happy to have you here. I know you're a busy guy. You recently added model to your list of many things. Can you tell us a bit about that?
I wore a traditional Nigerian outfit in the Taste of Africa fashion show, as asked by Helen. Or no, I think I probably volunteered myself. So yeah, it was a really cool experience. And if you hadn't gone to Taste of Africa, I encourage you to attend it next year.
Nice. And how'd you kind of improvise on that ensemble? How'd you top that look off?
The old cowboy hat,
Nice.
which was, Helen said you needed a hat. And I said, the only hat I have are baseball hats and a cowboy hat. And she said, the black cowboy hat will do. So that was
Nice.
fair. So yeah.
All right. Good guy in the black cowboy hat.
Yeah, good guy in the black hat.
Nice. Okay. Let's get to it. First round. So in this first round, you have 3 minutes to make your case as to why your book is the book to connect us. Brett Lamoureux, we're going to start with you. Brett, why is Life in the City of Dirty Water the book to connect us? You have 3 minutes. Audience,
I've timed
enjoy
my-
Canada Reads.
I've timed myself this week because I think I could
Okay.
talk as long as we have today. So my book is Life in the City of Dirty Water, Clayton Thomas-Muller. But I wanted to point out, we say don't judge a book by its cover, but this cover is by Christy Belcourt, who is an amazing artist. And if we did judge the book by its cover, we'd be absolutely correct in saying the book is beautiful, the cover is beautiful. And it's a great thing to have on your bookshelf or to take out from your local library. And the title of her art piece that's in here is called Our Lives Are in the Land, which is like a foreshadowing to what the book is about. And it's all about our relationship with the land. So the book is by first-time author Clayton Thomas-Muller, who has spent the last few decades advocating and working with organizations that promote and fight for climate change and campaign on behalf of Indigenous people around the world. So he has spent the last few decades in the trenches, so to speak, and going all over the world and talking to many different people who will listen about why the land matters. So the memoir is about Clayton. Obviously, it's his life, where he came from, who he came from, and how those relationships have impacted him. So he talks about being an intergenerational residential school survivor. He talks about his life growing up on the land, moving into cities, moving around with his mother. He talks about the people who have mentored him. But the thing about this book that I think everyone should know is, I think it's what we all need right now, which is a good chat with a friend we haven't seen in a long time, maybe a few years. It literally was like sitting down with a friend over coffee, and you talk for hours and hours and hours, and you've gone over, small things, little things, and you talk about the deep things, the big things in our life. And so he unpacks some of those things, he digs it up, he explores it, he reflects on it, and he shares that with you. So I would say there's like an intimacy in reading his book that I think maybe a lot of us want, is a good connection with someone. And so that book gives you that. There's also laughter, there's joy, there's reflection, and a huge thing for him is it's a memoir about healing, and it's a memoir about hope, which is, I think, very important. It's a good thing for us all to have. So you'll read about his parents and his family and the struggle they go through and how that impacts him. And then you'll learn about his experience in jail, his experience in gang life and leaving gang life. And the biggest thing I want to say is it leaves you with the importance of community. And that's what I wanted to leave us at.
So I was just perfect. I was just about to jump in with time's up. Always a difficult thing to do. Thank you, Brett. Audience, don't savor that opening salvo too long, because Julian is right up next. Julian, why is What Strange Paradise the book to connect us? You have 3 minutes. Take it away.
All right, thanks, Jeff. I can relate to what Brett was saying. Like, there's just so much I want to say, but I'm going to try and rein it in. This book is heart-wrenching. It draws a spotlight on the refugee situation that's occurring all the time. It focuses on, it's interesting because what strange paradise, and if you look at the book of Genesis in the Bible, paradise is described as something beautiful and harmonious, and your needs are met, etc. This book doesn't do that. This book talks very, very graphically about the perils and the horrors that are faced by people fleeing from war-torn countries. And in this case, it's acutely so because it's a little 9-year-old boy who, through circumstances, gets on a human smuggling ship. It's catastrophic. The journey is unbelievable in this dilapidated ship. It's not a ship, it's a fishing boat. They were promised a ship. It crashes on a Greek island. He's the sole survivor amongst all the corpses and debris, and he bolts for the woods, meets a 15-year-old girl who they form the most incredible relationship, where the 15-year-old has got insight and intuits this boy who can't speak the language, the danger he's in, because when refugees do survive on this island, they're kept in a compound, and she doesn't want that to happen. So their whole journey across the island is to get to a lighthouse where there's a possibility of him getting safe sanctuary, because on Sunday there's a fellow who will escort those, clandestinely escort those who are trying to get off the island. And I just wanted to read you one passage because I think it captures what connects us. And it's right around the time when Vanna is the little 15-year-old and Amir is the 9-year-old. And they formed quite a relationship to this point, and they're just reaching the peak of their journey, and they can see after having the island police pursue them, and it goes like this. That's where we're going, Vanna says, but the boy doesn't seem to notice the tip of the lighthouse, and if he does, he doesn't seem to understand. She sees him fidgeting, moving his shoulders such that his back rubs against the stolen jersey. She reaches over and pulls the back of the jersey's neck, revealing a swath of dead brown skin, the remnants of a sunburn. She eases the shirt off his back. Flakes cover the entirety of the boy's back and shoulders. Here and there, little peels of it curl upward from the reddening skin beneath. Vanna pinches one of the curls. It feels of nothing. From across his middle back, she peels away a patch the size of her palm, thin and fragile as a spiderweb. It comes off easily. She holds it up to the light, and in the light, she sees that it is not brown at all, but a translucent thing. She reaches over the boy's shoulder and hands him his skin. He gives her a look of mock disgust, but quickly he takes it and inspects it. Its microscopic rivulets, its infinite lightness. Then he crumples it up and tosses it to the ground. They sit a while like this, Vanna softly pulling away at the skin, and previously day's sunlight has killed, relieving the boy's discomfort. And I'll leave you with that, but it's a story that doesn't always end on hope, but it's a very, very important book to talk about not only the hope that we have for survival for refugees, but also that they thrive and that they're safe and that they're well cared for.
Thank you, Julian. Thanks for the reading too. So we got a book that's sounding like an old friend. This one is super relevant. Kelsey, gonna follow that
Hi.
up with 5 Little Indians. Hey.
Ooh, I mean, I think I'm going to keep it on the heavy note, actually. We'll talk
All right.
about my book. So my book
Let's
is
go
Five
heavy.
Little Indians. 5 Little Indians by Michelle Good is a work of fiction, probably one of the best books I've ever read in my life. It's focused around 5 characters: Howie, Clara, Lucy, Kenny, and Maisie. And this book is written in a really interesting way. It's kind of written in the way that each chapter is focused on one of the 5 kids. I find it interesting that the author kind of chose to do that because all of these stories intertwine together. And a lot of times you find other main characters in the chapters that you think are about somebody totally different. So I found that that was a really interesting way to keep everybody connected consistently. The book starts right off really heavy with the character Kenny escaping the Mission, which is the residential school that the kids are attending when they meet. It does a really sobering job of illustrating their different experiences in residential schools and the circumstances that led to their escape, if you will. All from like Kenny getting on a boat in the middle of the night and like running away to one of the kiddos aging out and being put on a bus to Vancouver. It shows a really wide variety of experiences, and I really, really value that. So after giving you like a really in-depth look at the character's childhood, the majority of the book focuses around the longstanding impact of the trauma from attending this school. The character's transition into adulthood is all but smooth, as they're often in situations that they weren't provided the skills to maneuver. The characters become parents, friends, even lovers in some cases, and each have a really distinct journey getting there. So this book, yeah, it's heavy. It really doesn't shy away from the intense topics of like abuse, sexual assault, substance use, intergenerational trauma, the damaging impact of colonialism, all those kinds of things. it doesn't shy away from the gruesome truth, but constantly brings you back to like those wow moments where you are really reminded of the resiliency of the characters. And I really valued that a lot. This book just really makes you think, you know, it connects you to Canada's history and kind of connects us as a country. And I find that really valuable. Of course, like it can't do justice to the experiences of all of the survivors, but it does a really good job of like drawing attention to the lifelong impacts of these systems that were put in place to oppress people. And I think that really connects us like to the land we're on and the place we're in. And I found that super powerful. I found myself walking through the book being connected to every single character in different ways and going on those journeys with them. Although a lot of times those journeys were really traumatic, I really did feel kind of like I had 5 new friends. And it was just a really interesting way to address like a really heavy topic. So I valued this book a ton. I really love it. I felt super connected to it, and it's a must read in my world. I think I'm like 20 seconds early.
Yeah, you're coming in early.
Oh.
All right. Coming in early with that heavy hitter, but hey, that's one of those from the sounds of it, you know, when you face that heaviness, you learn something from it. So yeah, awesome. Natalie, tell us about Scarborough, the book. Why is this the book to connect us?
So also very heavy topics in Scarborough. So it's a series of vignettes, so stories of people loosely connected through a new literacy center in a school in the neighborhood of Scarborough in Toronto. Ray, some of your stories came to mind when I was reading this. So through these stories in this neighborhood, the book explores the realities of poverty, homelessness, domestic violence, and child neglect. It goes into systematic racism and homophobia and the resulting trauma and justified distrust of police and social workers and anyone who is other or part of the system. So some of the stories talk about a woman who was hired to run that literacy center, who navigates discrimination against herself and against those who are visiting her center, and how she builds trust with the families that come to her with, you know, empty stomachs, too small clothes, with recurring lice, and who are really being failed by a system that is stacked against them. It talks about the story of that community's grief after a girl unnecessarily dies, after a life marked by being abandoned by her mother and being in the care of a father who deeply wants to do right by his daughter, but his history of being a deeply racist, gang-affiliated alcoholic makes that challenging, to say the least. So Scarborough is the book to connect us, because ultimately it's the story of a community not letting their bias get in the way of supporting each other and acknowledging each other's worth. And you know, it talks about an old man with a hole from a tracheotomy in a homeless shelter, babysitting a girl, another of, you know, who also lives in the shelter, so the mother can take the bus to access medical care way across town for her husband and son. It's that Indigenous mother fighting for her son despite the dismissal of doctors and lack of resources. It's about another mother getting past her own biases to support her gay son in their authenticity. And it's that literacy center programmer not letting comments about her hijab or wildly dismissive perspectives of her manager stop her from challenging the system that sets up the center's family to fail. And it's really the book to connect us, because it shows the impact of a broken social system. It gives dignity to the stories of people failed by that system, and it gives a glimpse of hope, you know, a possibility within that community. So thank you.
All right, thank you. Yeah, I just saw time's up right there. It sounds like an interesting community to be a fly on the wall in. So yeah, thanks for that. Ray, final opening round here, a final panelist here. Let's hear about Washington Black and why that's the book to connect us.
My book was a little lighter, but it dealt with a heavy topic, which was slavery. So it starts with a 12-year-old Washington Black and the horrible treatment that slaves were handed at the hand of the slave master in Barbados on a sugar plantation. And the author really has the ability to make you feel actually the pain and the brutality that the slaves were subjugated to by the slave owner. And the book starts with a lot of brutality and pain being shown. And Washington is the star of the book is kind of saved by the evil slave master's brother, who comes and kind of takes him on as his aide, teaching him how to draw and teaching him how to read, and teaching him how to build this cloud cutter thing that they have, which is a balloon that's like not a hot air, but a nitrogen balloon. And that's where it kind of gets a little weird, because that's where it's kind of fantasy. They escape on the cloud cutter after one of the evil plantation owner's friends commits suicide, and the slave Washington is worried that he's going to get blamed for this. So they escape on the cloud cutter, and this starts this journey around the world and escape from the plantation. And it kind of ends up where they end up in the Arctic, and this Titch, the guy who kind of takes the young black man under his wing, abandons him. And then the rest of the book, Washington tries to find Titch. And it's kind of, to me, it's a bit troubling that he feels that he really needs this man to live, and he just searches the whole world for him. But in the end, spoiler alert, he does find him, and he finds that he doesn't really need him. And at one point, like I said, when they're in the Arctic, Titch abandoned the young boy, and they never really answer why he abandoned him in the book. And they never really answered what happened to him, because it's like he disappears in the Arctic, and he kind of disappears and never is seen. But the book, to connect us, I think the reason is that it really kind of brings this issue of slavery to the forefront, and that it is a part of our history in Canada here. So, that's why I kind of think the book was kind of excellent for me in that way. But like I said, once again, it's a story that I've heard many, many times. So.
Interesting. Thanks, Ray. We'll touch on those fantasy elements in our next round here. Awesome first round. Really cool, just like watching everyone here watch each other and the expressions on your face. It's been great. I know we try so hard to match readers with good books at the library, but yeah, just hearing that opening round, we got some good panelists matched with good books. So yeah, excited to see where this goes next. Audience, hope you're doing well. I can't keep up on the chat. I just see time's up, etc. But yeah, I hope you're all doing well. Start thinking of some questions you might want to put to the panelists here. So, because we will reach out to you coming up. So round two, this is what I'm calling a very Canadian round. So this one starts with a quote, and it's from CBC Canada Reads host Ali Hassan. In these days of isolation, we're exploring stories that inspire readers to reflect on community and who we are and the world we live in. We know so many of our neighbors are feeling isolated this winter, so the moment feels right to explore stories of community. This year's books will remind readers that we're all connected and that we're stronger when we come together. We can work through hard things and find the hope we need to keep going. I'm feeling that quote already, because I'm starting to hear, little pieces of that through all your annotations or everything you're saying tonight. So yeah, this is great. Let's get to a round where everyone will go. So panelists, get ready. Here's the question. You'll each have 1 minute for this next question. Canada Reads is about one book all of Canada reads, which makes sense. What makes your book a Canadian book more than the other books? I'm going to go right back to Ray. What makes your book a Canadian book more than the other books? 1 minute.
Okay, I feel like I already lost. This is a hard defense because this book wasn't really a Canadian book, in my opinion. It was
Right.
written by a Canadian, but it wasn't really about a Canadian story. Really, pretty much the only thing really that I found really Canadian about the book was that it was written by a Canadian author, and that part of it took place in the Arctic, which was very cold in Canada. So there was a lot of ice, and there was talk of Inuit and building igloos and stuff when he was up in the Arctic. And then once that was where the man that befriended the young black boy abandoned him, was in the Arctic. So that was really kind of the only bit of Canadian in the story. As far as that, he was in Morocco, he was in Amsterdam, he was in the US, but he wasn't really in Canada. So yeah, I'm going to have a hard time defending it as being a real Canadian kind of a Canadiana story here, and really speaking to the heart of Canadians, with the exception, like I said, of the whole issue of slavery and how black people were treated as slaves. That's kind of that's the obvious part about it, but the rest of it, yeah, it wasn't set in Canada. Not like Scarborough.
All right. Yeah. Good segue, because Natalie's up next. Ray, I think she's got you right where she wants you. So Natalie, what makes your book a Canadian book more than the other books?
Although, you know what, I'm going to kind of echo what Ray said about his book. You know, this Scarborough is set in Toronto, but I wouldn't describe it as telling uniquely Canadian stories. The diversity described, so country of origin, religion, personal experience, might be somewhat more common in Canada, depending on where you are, but it's really not exclusively Canadian. And, you know, the stories of bias and systematic inequality really reach everywhere. Through my privilege, I've traveled a lot, and my partner's traveled even more widely than I have. And what we've both seen is that those systems that perpetuate inequality are everywhere, as are the incredible impacts of the communities that come together to, you know, to take care of their children, to feed their children, to help each other. So yeah. So not that different from you, Ray.
Okay, so it's not really Canada Reads now. Kelsey, 1 minute. What makes your book a Canadian book more than the other books?
Well, I feel like I've got it in the bag now, because my book couldn't be more Canadian. My book is about the residential school system. That's pretty Canadian, if you ask me. One of the things that I'm super proud of about being a Canadian is that we acknowledge the things that we did wrong. We sit in that discomfort, and that's what this book encourages you to do. It draws a lot of really important attention to all of the traumas that came along with residential schools, and it's set in Canada. All of the characters are Indigenous people, so we're here long before Canada even existed, and it couldn't be more Canadian, if you ask me. Yeah, I think it's really cool that I had these two lovely humans go before me, because that just segued me into a beautiful, this is the most Canadian book you'll read all year.
All right, it's on. Julian, thank you, Kelsey, by the way. What makes your book a Canadian book more than the others?
Okay, full disclosure, I looked up on the internet the 10 characteristics that constitute Canadian literature, and mine ticks off 6. So I'm just going to go quick here. Mild anti-Americanism. This one is blatant anti-Americanism. Multiculturalism. There's a great contrast between cultures. You've got the folks come on the run expecting land of plenty and welcome, and then you have the not so welcoming cultures on the other end. You have the disdain of the colonel on the island trying to hunt out these refugees, and yet he has such disdain for the rich people that have completely transformed his island. Nature is another one. There's a Melvillian images of the calypso at sea, where there's just, you know, that's so Canadian. It's just all like the turmoil of nature. Satire and irony. There's the face of horror, where there's all this debris on the beach, and yet you have these privileged rich folks taking selfies with their back to the debris, and if that's not more, that's the most cynical. Search for self-identity, that goes through with the little boy searching for his identity and his place. And then the last one is the underdog hero, and there's many throughout the book. The migrants, their selflessness on the boat, yet there's also tremendous cruelty. Vanna risking so much to look out for this little boy. And the Amir's tenacity for hanging in there, and the woman who runs the compound for refugees, she is a hero and goes to extreme measures to get these two young'uns to their sanctuary. A bit of a cheater, but there you go. It wasn't a canoe and a beaver, but you know what I mean.
I don't know if you're cheating, unless if you're cheating, we're cheating too. Because Louisa is in the chat here. She's our reader services librarian, your reader service librarian for 30 plus years. Louisa, did you know about this list of what makes a book like just a very Canadian book? Because I feel like we're missing out here. We need to know that. So Julian, thank you. We've learned something tonight. Let us know, Louisa. Interested to hear. Brett, it's on to you now. So what makes your book a Canadian book more than all these other books?
I'm going to one up that and say my book is very Canadian because he starts with a thank you and ends with a thank you. I think my book, I was thinking about this a lot because I've lived in Quebec, which is very different than Alberta. And I was thinking, and you know, Canada is a very large place. And I think the one thing that connects us and the one thing we're really known for internationally is our land. We have a lot of space. We have a lot of land. We have a lot of natural resources. And in the book, the author, Clayton, talks about the land is what connects us. Whether your family has been here for thousands and thousands of years, whether you're a newcomer and a new Canadian here, the land connects us. We need the land. And his book is talking about that relationship with the land. And I think it's a reminder that it's our turn to take care of the land after the land has taken care of us. And so I think what could be more Canadian than talking about taking care of each other and thanking people profusely through the entire book of who helped him and who mentored him along the way. So that's what I'm going to say.
All right, well said, Brett. Okay, let's start picking these books apart a little bit and talk about some features of them. Next up, Five Little Indians is a work of fiction. Author Michelle Good said, "It occurred to me that this needed to be told as a story, as something that people could engage in with more ease than a factual diatribe." So Brett and Kelsey, this one's for you. Is that true? Or does a nonfiction memoir like Life in the City of Dirty Water make more of an impact? Brett and Kelsey have 2 minutes each.
I'm going to jump right off and say, I think that it being my book being fictional makes it a lot easier to be uncomfortable, a lot easier to dive in. Sometimes I find factual books when I'm reading about like a true story about an individual, sometimes if it's really trauma heavy, I find myself oftentimes I want to shy away from that a little bit, or like I'm a really empathetic person. So I will be like, oh, well, this like happened to a person that like wrote this book and that's really impactful. And sometimes I feel like fictional characters and fictional stories encourage you to go outside of your comfort zone. I feel like they kind of bring you to a place where you're picking up a book that you may not always pick up. And I think that that's super cool about this book. I think this book will really encourage a lot of people to, you know, start their journey on learning about this kind of stuff, start their journey on picking up books like this and reading it. And oftentimes picking up a fictional book is a lot easier than picking up like something that's super true, right? Like true stories sometimes can be a little bit heavier. So if you're just kind of starting to learn about something, in my opinion, it's always easier to start with some fiction and then kind of like slowly ingrain yourself into like that heavier stuff. So I don't know, I think that fictional books make it easy. I mean, I am a little biased because this is my book and I'm defending it, but I think that it makes it way easier to engage in it. And this really made me reflect on what makes a book easy to engage in for me, and being able to invest wholeheartedly and not kind of detach myself from myself and just dive into the story really made this phenomenal for me, and I really loved it. So it's all you, Brett.
Well, I thought when I got this book, because I do not read memoirs, I think the last biography I tried to read was, I don't know, old and boring, and I did not finish it. This is great because this was actually so much started as oral history, as him telling his story, and it was recorded, and they eventually wrote it down. So there's a great lyrical storytelling to this book that's in the printed version that I really love. I will say that this book is so centered on hope and healing. So there's truthfulness and there's hard things to read that happened to him and his family, but it's not trauma centered, it's hope centered, which I really found inspiring. And I will say that what I loved about this book and the fact that is based, it's his life, is that I can now follow him on Twitter. And I can now follow his organization that he's working for. And I can look up all these things that he talked about. Maybe some I knew, maybe some I didn't know. And I can engage with him in his story as it continues in real time. So I really enjoyed the continuation outside of the book than just sitting here reading it. And then I could, sit and go on my phone or, look up a news story about things that he's done and organizations that he's working with. So I think that I love that I could continue to engage with his story because he is a real person, just living a little, a few thousand miles away from us here. And with social media and the internet and Zoom, he can, we can connect in that way. And so, yeah, I thought it was really powerful. And I think there's nothing more powerful than a personal testimony. Right? I mean, the Olympics, that's why everyone cries at the Olympics. And that's why in the Cheerio commercials with the moms and the dads who sacrificed everything so their kids could go to hockey and be the Olympians, like, I think there's nothing more inspiring than a true story. And it's cool that he's Canadian.
All right. To which I say, are we really ourselves on social media though? I mean, no, I'm just kidding. Wah, wah. Okay, let's have everyone else get in on that if you wish. Natalie, Ray, Julian, we open the floor to you for any of your comments.
You know what? I listened to both those explanations, and I agree 100% with both of them. I read, the vast majority of what I read is nonfiction, and a lot of it is really dark and really challenging to get through, uncomfortable. And so when I read for, I don't generally read books that hurt as much as this one does, but having that slight fictional quality to it certainly helps get through the stories without just being a wreck, right? So I agree with both of you. Those were both excellent.
Awesome. Ray, jump right in.
Once again, I've got a totally different opinion coming out of here. I'm the guy who only reads nonfiction all the time. And even when I'm relaxing, I really usually read nonfiction. So the part about this book, I love the book, but I thought the nonfiction part, like when he escapes on this balloon, which is this, it's a helium balloon or whatever, and they call it the cloud cutter, and that crashes onto the deck of a ship in the ocean. That was a little hard to fathom, right? That the coincidence, like he blows off Barbados and it ends up landing on a ship. And then how this young black guy who's a slave can travel all over the kind of world. And they never really talk about how he manages to do that financially wise. And he's always kind of all over the place. And for me, that was just a little difficult. For being a guy of nonfiction, I wanted to have like those answers to that, like how a little more detail of how he got there. And the whole thing of the cloud cutter, I didn't really see the need for that. So for me, the part of making it, I don't mind fictitious characters, but I kind of want reality throughout the story. I don't like a story that's half reality that has some kind of fantasy issues in it or some kind of fairy tale-ish stuff. And the stuff about him floating all over the place in the cloud cutter was a little bit fairy tale-ish for me, just as a personal reader, But so, because I'm a real nonfiction kind of guy. So yeah, I think if that would have been taken out of the book, it would have been better for me. Sorry about that.
That's okay. We got Michelle and Michelle. They're in Portland right now, and they're just saying so practical, Ray.
Well, that's what it didn't fit. Like a story has to either be all fantasy for me, anyways. Like it has to be like it's a Marvel comic, or it has to be like it's a story that I can understand, right? The pieces all add up in the end, and I look, okay, well, how did this happen, right?
I encourage everyone to read Jurassic Park. You will find the sweet spot. Okay. Julian.
I've read it. Don't.
All right, that's a whole other reads debate program. Julian, let's hear from you.
Just a comment. Both Kelsey and Brett touched on it, and I think it's very resonates with Omar's book. This idea that the emotions, when they're tapped properly, you can barely put the thing down, and it stays with you in a very visceral manner. And with my book, and I'm trying to steer it back, but I find that and I think this is the same with Kelsey's book too. The idea of looking at something through a child's lens, and I listened to a number of our interviews with Omar before getting onto this illustrious panel, and he said he was asked the question about why where he holds his hope, because he's so immersed in this book and refugees and just the callousness of how the immigrant is treated and so on. And he reverts back to that's why he focused on children and the whole plot through the eyes of children, because he said, they have this, and it sounds sort of trite and cliche, but they have this innocence, and their worldview is just so fresh compared to the calculating, manipulating world of the adult. And so all the way through, you have this lovely, refreshing, but sometimes agonizing perspective of the children, but they're just unbridled loyalty to one another, and their hopes is so it stays with you in such a deep level. So I think that's where the novel really, especially if it taps your heart like that, it stays with you.
All right, Julian, catch your breath, because you and Ray, you're up next. Washington Black and What Strange Paradise have storybook and fairy tale elements. Ray and Julian, can those books be as effective in sharing their message as the more realistic storylines of Five Little Indians, Scarborough, and life in the City of Dirty Water? Julian, you have 2 minutes.
Well, I kind of used my first point there, which was the idea that the novel having the potential to create emotional change, actually altering our emotional worldview. I think that really struck me in the novel, how the impact emotionally stays with you. If you read about all the stats on refugees and successful, not so successful, how many capsized boats, that's one thing, but those are numbers. But when you delve into a story of a little 9-year-old, it was a whole different level of emotional commitment. The book was really interesting and it was very evocative, because every chapter was titled before and after, before and after. So you're reading what happened to Amir before the accident, what happens after, once he's on the island. So we get life from fleeing Syria, and he's traumatized by the war, obviously, and then he's on this horrific journey on the Mediterranean. And all the intricate, like all the stuff that goes on deck. There's people above deck, and then there's people below deck, depending on your skin color and how much money you have. And he's separated by his uncle, and his uncle pays for the boy's passage. The boy came on that boat by accident. Anyway, what's very huge impact is you're constantly going before, after, all the way through. And another thing that Omar is interested in was the Peter Pan, the story of Peter Pan. And as we know, that's the story of the eternal boy that never gets to grow up. Whereas Omar takes this wonderful model and inverts it. And I won't go into too much more, because I don't want to do the spoiler alert, because I'll just leave it at that. So he takes Peter Pan and kind of does a major, reappropriates it and inverts the story. And although it's fiction, I think Omar has layered many themes, and it's, we've heard about some of them in the other books, but there's racism, social justice, there's the callous immigration structures, toxic masculinity. And that's really interesting because these men and women, but they focus on the men who've lost so much and so much has been taken away from them. So now they're going to a country where they're going to take scraps off the table. And that just came through in such powerful impact. So yeah, there's a lot of other themes, but I just saw Louise's hand wave at me, so I'm going to be quiet.
Okay. Ray, on to you.
I think, this is about Canada Read, so we're encouraging people to read. I'm not trying to win. I'm encouraging people to read. The answer to your question, really, can these books be as effective sharing their message as a more realistic storyline? When we're talking about such heavy issues like racism and poverty and gender and everything else that are really dealt with in the Little Indians and Scarborough and life in the dirty city, I think a more realistic storyline is easier to tell through a more realistic book than using kind of storybook kind of fairy tale elements as which were contained in the book that I read. Like when you're dealing with such a heavy issue such as slavery, like one person put in the chat, they said that book went, all of a sudden we're in Barbados and this book is just talking about this harsh treatment of slavery. And then all of a sudden he's in a cloud cutter floating through the sky off the island, right? And then he's on a totally different adventure, and they kind of took you a lot out of that plantation slavery kind of image. So I think it's very hard when you're dealing with really, really heavy issues to add a kind of storybook fairy tale element to tell the story. A realistic story is going to be much better at telling those kind of heavy stories than a fairy tale storybook. That's my answer to that question.
It's a good answer.
I really defend my book, but it's the answer to the question, I think.
Yeah, no, Ray, you didn't fool me up until now. I thought he's not playing to win. But with that last answer, yeah, no, great answer. You're right back in it. Brett, Kelsey, Natalie, would you like to chime in?
So I wasn't joking when I said I literally have been reading my whole life. My parents would like take the flashlight away from me, before cell phones, and read at night. I literally read forever, and I love now you have the book on your phone or the book on your iPad. I love that. It's like lighter in your purse. But I will say I think it depends on the person, and I think books and how we relate to them is more reflective on where we are individually and what we're going through. Because there's sometimes where in a fiction book, you can get these details and the author can write so vividly. And sometimes that's great and you want that. And other times, maybe it hits too close to home. Maybe there's something going on and it's a little too much, right? And sometimes you get home at the end of the day and you want to watch a Hallmark movie, or sometimes you want a DC comic, right? And so I think there's both. I'm going to say my book had great storytelling. I know my time is up, but I think it really depends on where you are in life. But I think there's a book for everyone out there.
Absolutely. Kelsey, Natalie.
I totally have no qualms and no issues at all defending my book wholeheartedly. I think that I don't think that fairy tale or storybook type books can really have the same effect as a kind of something that's a little more factual. Like, I know I've said that mine is a fiction, but mine is a fiction based on factual things that actually happened, right? So the characters may be fictional, but there's little Howie, Clara, Kennys everywhere, right? So I think specifically for my book in particular, I don't think it would have been nearly as effective kind of getting the message across if it had those fairy tale elements. And I love that about it, right? Like, I think that you could see yourself and you could see your friends and like the Indigenous people in these characters. And I think that being able to relate that closely to them makes it so much easier of a read, makes it so much easier to engage in. And I think that you don't necessarily get the best chance to do that in a situation where it has like a storybook or fairy tale element.
All right. Natalie?
Thank you. You know what, I approach this as a parent. I've got 3 kids, and so whatever book they're reading, whichever book they're engaged with, is the absolute right book for them. If they pick a book up that is fairy tale or not fairy tale and they don't read it, it's not going to impact them. So for me, I'll echo what Brett said, that it depends of where you're at. All 3 of my kids like completely different books, which is infuriating because you buy it for the oldest one, you expect the other 2 to read it, and it doesn't happen. So I would say it absolutely depends on the individual. And I grew up in a home with a library of about 5,000 fantasy sci-fi novels, and I had insomnia, and so that's what I read growing up. And my stepdad collected comic books, so I read all the comic books growing up. And I was at the library constantly because I loved those old stories that didn't have the fantasy elements. So my book worked for the story it was telling for the people who are willing and ready to pick up that book.
Love it. I feel great. When I say read, what that really means is I watched a TikTok or saw an infographic on stories. So yeah, that works for me too.
500-page agenda package. Ray misses.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm sure you both read every, right? Okay. We're on to you, Natalie. We're coming right back at you. We're talking about Scarborough. It's set in a very specific neighborhood, which is central to the character stories. Now, Natalie, how relatable is the book to readers in completely different communities? You got 2 minutes.
Thank you. And I struggled with this question, so bear with me while I kind of explain why I found this story overwhelmingly relatable, as a parent, but also because my father was an alcoholic who spent time homeless in Vancouver. As a young adult, I was the victim of domestic violence. But I'm still incredibly privileged because of my lifelong food security, housing security, and having an incredible family that I could rely on. And in my work life, I regularly experience the indignation of people who really wouldn't recognize their privilege if it was screaming 2 inches from their face. And I recognize that doesn't reflect everyone, but our biases are based on our lived experience. So putting that kind of privilege expression aside, I think everyone can relate to a desire to do the best we can for our kids. And that's what you see in this book. People want to do the best they can. We all relate to that feeling that we've somehow failed our kids, no matter where we fall on that spectrum of wealth. And we all feel that sadness at seeing tragedy outside of our control. We're feeling that now for Ukraine, or really our frustration at not being seen or heard or misunderstood. And we can all relate to that desire to feel connection, to feel supported, to be part of something bigger than ourselves. So in that way, this story is almost universally relatable.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for sharing that, Natalie. Anyone else want to talk about what makes their book relatable? Or if you know something about Scarborough that might not be. I don't know. It's your game to play. Ray.
Yeah, I'll talk about what makes my book relatable to people of many different backgrounds and experiences. It's a story of racism, and many people of many different backgrounds and experiences experience racism, like all over the world. It's a book of subjugation of others and the slavery of others, the enslavement of others. And we hear many stories all over TV and media about people being enslaved and subjugated. and it's a story of freedom. And you know, the boy does escape, even though the cloud cutter is a corny way to escape. he gets off the island of Barbados, okay, on the cloud cutter, and he escapes. And it is a story of freedom. And you know, it's very, you know, I'm not trying to play on what's happening today in the news, but it's very relevant today in what's happening in the news. A story of freedom, like the people of Ukraine, right? They're fighting for their freedom. They're fighting hard for this freedom. And this kid fought for his freedom. He, at one point, there was a bounty hunter after him, a slave bounty hunter. And they had a horrific fight out in the street, and he escaped barely with his life from that. So it's a story that I think a lot of people could relate to from that point of view of subjugation, and of once he lost this titch, like this guy, the white guy who took care of him and then kind of abandoned him in the Arctic, and then he spent his whole life searching for him because he really thought he needed this person. And I think there's a lot of people from different backgrounds and experience can all relate to that too. Like, you know, somebody leaves you, or somebody leaves your life, and then you search for them, or you want them back and you want them back. And then in the end, when you finally find them, you know, they're not what you thought they were, or you don't really need them as much as you thought you needed them. So that's why I think this book is really good at relating to people of different backgrounds and different experiences.
All right. Anyone else?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Brett.
Go ahead, Brett.
Thank you. I would say that for my book, Life in the City of Dirty Water, Clayton and I, don't have a lot in common. I did not grow up on reserve. I did not join a gang. I did not go to jail. I, went to high school and university. I had food security and I had a secure home life. So there's a lot that I couldn't relate to. And I think that's okay. I think it's okay to recognize that there are lots of people in Canada who experience life very differently than me. But I will say it's like 6 Degrees of Kevin Bacon, the game where you find the connection. And it's not maybe always a direct connection. It might be a curveball. It might be, a little bit separated. But I think there is a connection. And for Clayton and I, one was we both lost our dad. We both lost our dad, and we dealt with it differently. It was different circumstances. But, there's a connection there. And I will say also, my connection to that book would be different than yours. So you need to check it out from the library to read it and find out.
That you do. Julian, let's find out more about your book.
Just quickly, I think I just would like to pick up where Natalie left off with the idea of privilege, because I think and again, it's a connection thing. Like, we are coming out of this pandemic, sort of coming out of this pandemic. And I think that, we're a privileged class in the sense that we can say, it will work out. We got Moderna, and we got brilliant men's like Fauci working on us, and we got this covered, and eventually we'll come out of it. But those fleeing persecution, like in the story from Omar, they don't have any guarantees. They forfeit their future completely up to chance. And, I have this idea that the migrants' future depends on the fluctuation between cruelty and kindness. And it's just an absolute luck of the draw. And I'm with Natalie, like, shake yourself. Like, my God, we have so much going on. And when you read the challenges and the atrocities that people are facing, i.e. Ukraine, it's incomprehensible that you are all of a sudden, your city is annihilated, and you and the kids and your husband staying behind, and you now got to find yourself with thousands up to millions now bombarding the neighboring countries. So this What Strange Paradise really taps into that. Like, wake up and not only just wake up, but start to think about what systemically needs to be addressed here. Let's put some of our leaders' feet to the fire and say we've got to change things up and be a little more inclusive and compassionate.
Love it. That's the world I want to live in. Kelsey?
Yeah, I would say my book was relatable on a really interesting way for me. it's obviously, it would be a lot more relatable to people that are in the Indigenous community. But for me, I found it really relatable because I have gotten to a point in my life where, since they've been uncovering all these mass graves and everything, I've been asking the questions, where was my family during this? You know, where were my ancestors? As a white person, where did I stand in this during this time? Like, if my family didn't know about this going on, what does that really mean? And I think that if this book isn't relatable to you, it's a good time to pick it up and kind of build that, right? Because I think that we all need to be grounded in this discomfort, and this discomfort comes at a very small cost to those of us that didn't experience it. And I think it really replicates a lot of the points that were already made about privilege. And a lot of us grew up in really beautiful, lavish lifestyles, and it's a really Canadian thing that a lot of the people that live as our neighbors did not grow up the same. So yeah.
Wonderful round. Thank you, everyone. We're going to turn it over to the audience. I've seen some stuff go through the chat. Michelle, they're coming in. They're tuning in from Portland. They would normally be here tonight hosting this, so shout out to them. They're in Portland at the biggest library conference in all of North America, ALA. So yeah. She says, dang it, you are defending your book so well. They are. Okay, audience. Now it's time to turn over to you, though. You're the judge and jury of tonight. So what questions do you want to drop in the chat? We'll give 8 to 10 minutes for this. Louisa, maybe you should time me, because I won't know when to cut this off. So let's snoop around and see what kind of questions we got here as they're populating. Okay, I got one that is okay, this one's for sure. This comes from Janice. I'm reading Omar's book right now. The connectiveness of these books is the heavy-hitting tool at the traumas and issues of marginalized peoples. We need to look at the history and story through new lenses. How do we respond in positive ways to make changes to policies and systems examined from the viewpoint of the characters in these books? Okay, policies and systems. How do we make changes to those from the characters in these books? Anyone? Natalie?
That's literally my job, and it was Ray's job. You do it by engaging with people, by bringing communities together so they understand the value of changing policies to help people. And you do it by using, learning how to be empathetic, because I think it's absolutely a learned skill, by teaching about bias so that those policies can change. So, I mean, really high level, that's how I would say that you get it done. And it's too slow for my liking, but that's how you start.
Julian, yeah.
Yeah, just a quick note. I attended a session at the Star of the North. I'm forgetting the Indigenous elder that spoke to us, but he left us with and similar to what Natalie's saying, he left us with, if you want to get this process of truth and reconciliation really started, you know, befriend and meet someone, but not just have coffee and then call it, but develop a relationship and listen to the story and listen to it, and only then by you know, breaking down that barrier and thinking, you know, or having read an article or something, when you have an actual person in front of you. So that relationship is critical, I think. It's a small step, but I think it's a very effective step.
Oh, well, thank you. Would anyone else like to answer?
Yeah, give it a go. So
Okay,
in my
sure.
book, Clayton talks that there's no social justice without the land. There's no social justice with, like, now, you know, policy being changed on how the land is divided and who has access to the land. So in this book that I'm defending, it's very much land-based. And it's really interesting because he talks specifically about, for so much of his, you know, 20s, 30s, he came from a place of anger, and he talked about eventually learning to fight for what he's fighting for, not from a place of anger, but from a place of hope and love. And so that I really liked. And for me personally, I would say one of the best ways is to know the history of where you live, to know the history of the community that you're in. So maybe that can help understand as you move forward what policies need to change. Why did they come in place in the first place? You know, who, you know, the history you need to know to move forward. But I really liked Clayton's talk about, he says here, warriors are defined not by fighting, but they are defined by fighting for. And I really like that. I think that's a good quote to have tonight. Who are you fighting for, right? Not against, but for.
Awesome. Anyone else? I mean, not everyone needs to respond to it if you don't want to, but we're just looking at history through a new lens and how we respond to it in positive ways to make changes to policies and systems. Anyone? No. Okay. Well, hey, face history. Don't let yourself off the hook. There's lots to learn. Natalie, does Scarborough speak to people who aren't parents?
Absolutely.
Dying to know.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, all of us understand connection and understand wanting to take care of people, understanding, you know, when someone is suffering, understanding how to help. You know, a lot of the stories in Scarborough talk about children helping children, and the reasons why sometimes they are not able to because of, you know, circumstance or what they have going on at home. So I would say that that's a very human experience and is not exclusive to parents at all. Yeah, it's a beautiful story.
All right, thank you. I'm just going through my questions here as they're coming up. Okay, this is from Sandine. Some of the presenters have told us about the author of the book. This one is directed right to Natalie again. Maybe all of you can take a crack at this. What can you tell us about the author of the book? I'd love to hear everyone on that.
All right, I'll go first really quickly. Sandine, that's a tricky question. I don't know a lot about the author. It says that she's a queer theater practitioner and writer, but really what struck me about her as an author is in the acknowledgements, kind of halfway through, she thanks the people that helped her tell these stories. And I commented earlier that she gave dignity to these stories. And she said, you know, to the beautiful people of Scarborough and all the people who privately interviewed with me about their lives, thank you for inspiring me with your resilience and strength. And so I think that tells a lot about the author, her genuine interest in telling these stories authentically. Says a lot about who she is as a writer. So that's what I have for you.
All right. Anyone want to talk about the authors of their books? Jump right in.
I can. So Michelle Good, let me show you her. She's phenomenal and stunning. She is a Cree woman. She is from Saskatchewan and she currently lives and writes in British Columbia. She's worked as a lawyer advocating for residential school survivors, and this is her first book, actually. So I don't know too much about her, but I do know those really important facts that, yeah, she is of Cree ancestry from Saskatchewan and has advocated for the survivors of the schools that she's writing about. So she has a really, really good firsthand look at these kinds of things.
Omar El Akkad, he is also a refugee who's come to escape. I think it was in, I know he covered as a journalist of the Arab Spring, and so he's had a huge lived experience as a refugee and also as a journalist covering. And a very interesting CBC interview I heard was from, I believe the fellow's name is Tarek. Tarek has been 6 years living in this country, and he started a very successful chocolate factory in bringing, what's it called? Death by Chocolate or something really catchy. And he's hired about 60 people, and it's in Antigonish, Nova Scotia. And he and Omar have a conversation, and they were both saying that this is a hopeful sign that, when we were back, leaving bombed out countries, that we ever thought we would be established with professions or, successful businesses. So both these men, I thought, was a very hopeful and promising note to say that, yeah, okay, there is a little glimmer of light in some of these refugee stories.
My author, Esi Edugyan, she is born in Calgary in 1978. So let's give it up for Calgary. Her parents are both immigrants from Guyana, and she studied at the University of Victoria. She's a two-time Giller Award winner, and she's had 2 previous books.
All right.
And my author, Clayton Thomas-Muller, this is his first book that he wrote. If you're not into reading, which I hope we all convince you to read one of these books at least, but if your time is short, he does actually have a documentary. I think it's a 20-minute documentary based on this book. But he is from Treaty 6. He's from Northern Manitoba, and he has spent the last 2 or 3 decades fighting for climate justice, social justice for Indigenous people internationally, from Washington, D.C., to Ottawa, and kind of everywhere in between. He definitely has been around, and right now he's working for an organization called 350.org, and you can look it up and follow him on social media if you want. He does Cree words of the week, I think, on Twitter, which was quite fun.
All right, nice. Natalie, just wondering, are you still there? Video just maybe went.
I think she just moved location, so she just put it on.
Oh,
I did. Yeah, I'm carrying my computer around with me, but you guys are in my house.
All right. We'll do one more audience question, and then we'll wrap up that segment. To all the panelists, is there a book that should have been part of Canada Reads this year? Pretty much, what's your recent favorite Canadian book? Quickly, anyone, jump in.
I'll go, because this is the reason why I disappeared for a bit.
Okay.
We shouldn't be Canadian Reads. I don't read a lot of fiction, but when I do, it's often not Canadian. But Northwest Passage is a beautifully illustrated children's book. Julian's laughing because he knows the song. He can hear it in his head right now. But I am a huge art nerd, so the illustrations by Matt James are just stunning, and it's a beautiful lyrical story, very Canadian. So not Canadian Reads, but it's a great Canadian book. Great for kids.
Awesome.
I asked somebody on the weekend and they didn't know who Stan Rogers was. I couldn't believe it. And they said they were Canadian.
Anyone else?
He was the 13th disciple, wasn't he? Ray, he was the 13th disciple.
Ooh, saw a comment in the chat. We should do a kids Canada Reads. That would be fun.
This book, I would recommend. So this is Treaty Words for As Long as the River Flows. And it's a great book. And it is quick. I would say quick to read for me. I don't know what everyone's reading level is, but it talks about the spirit of treaty. And I know a lot of places now do treaty acknowledgements and land acknowledgements. But this is a great book, and I think it's written for kids, but I fell in love with it. And it's just is the spirit of treaty. So it's not a historical, factual book. So it has a little bit of maybe that magic sprinkled in terms of that storytelling. But this is, I think if I remember, a grandpa and a granddaughter, and she asks him, and it's really about the relationship with the land. So this is one, I would invite everyone to read. And if you need to borrow it, maybe ask Jeff if they have it at the library.
Do we? Louisa will look it up. Anyone else? Anything to
I am
share?
currently reading, I'm forgetting the title, it's Kindness in it, and it's written by a feminist theologian,
Hmm.
and it's
Nice.
actually Veronica Johnson is her name. She's a nun, and she's kicking the stuffing out of the masculine hierarchical Catholic Church. Whoa, it's great. I don't know if it's Canadian, but it's good.
Wonderful.
I have a phenomenal recommendation, actually. It's called We Have Always Been Here. It's by Samra Habib, and it's a queer Muslim memoir
Nice.
about a Muslim family that moves from where they are to Canada and kind of the queer journey that this one Muslim girl goes through. And it's super powerful and moving and just absolutely phenomenal. Would highly recommend.
Sounds good. All right. Well, I think that caps it with the audience questions. Oh, Louisa dropped a link in the chat. That is likely to the book. Oh, We Have Always Been Here. Drop that one in. What about Brett's book? Maybe. Not sure. Okay. Yeah, let's get to it. Last question. Pretty much the last chance you have to help us decide what Canada's next great read is. Everyone, you got 1 minute each. This is your last chance to make clear your argument as to why your book should win. Simple as that. Who wants to go first? Julian.
Okay, so you might have recalled September 15th, 2015, Alan Kurdi, the 3-year-old boy, washed up on the shores of a Greek island coast. And then the whole planet was united in their revulsion. And the thing that Omar is bringing to our attention with What Strange Paradise is there's this societal amnesia. We get buzzed by the headlines, and then all of a sudden we turn the page until something else comes along. And he said, hence, nothing really gets tackled in a systemic kind of effective way. This book connects us with the brutal, harsh, terrifying experience of the fleeing migrant. And at present, this was an actual stark fact I came across. 80 million people currently have left their homes, and half of those are children. So like 40 million children. The book is extreme opposites, hope and despair, past, present, possibility, and likelihood, and kindness and cruelty. All that comes at you, which is the human condition. And it's through the eyes, as I said before, the lens of a child, which is refreshing but sort of heart-wrenching too, because it's just is. Omar rehumanizes the discussion about migration on the global scale. And through the lens of children, there's an honest interaction with the world versus how broken the world is. And there's a great line in there where Amir and Vanna are just looking at the lighthouse at the east end of it. They've just about got to their destination where freedom lies, sanctuary, and they hold hands, even though they don't speak the language. They run down the hill, and Amir starts to yell out "Yalla Yalla," which translates in Arabic as "Let's go, let's go," and it conveys a kind of an urgency, movement, a kind of push forward. And I just sort of thought that kind of fit beautifully on the book.
Beautiful. Who wants to follow that? Okay, right. 1 minute.
Yeah, everyone should read this book because it's a very powerful feeling about what it would feel like to be a slave. It gives you, the writer has an amazing way of making you feel the pain of slavery. And believe me, I've heard stories of slavery. Both sides of my family were escaped slaves on the Underground Railroad. So I've heard stories of slavery my entire life. And this story brought a tear to my eyes at point with the description of the slavery and the hatred and the subjugation that people placed upon another people just because of their color of their skin, and how they were just hunted and basically felt to feel inhuman just because of the color of their skin and nothing else. And the book has a very good way of making you feel that that's not a right thing to do, and that nobody should ever be enslaved by anybody anywhere at any time for any reason, and that the damage caused by something like that happening, what it did to this boy, is life scarring. So I think everybody should read this book just for that reason.
Respect. Who wants to follow Ray? Kelsey.
I'll hop in. I think that my book is the winning book because it really kind of grounds you and connects you to such an important piece of Canadian history. It really sparks that discomfort feeling that we all really need in situations like that. It gives you that discomfort in all the right places, but it constantly brings you back to the resiliency of the characters, and it makes them really easy to connect to in that way. I think that it's extremely Canadian. I think that it's an absolute must read, and I think it's a really great place for people to start on their learning journey about residential schools. And I think that it's just the start of, hopefully the start of Michelle Good's writing, because the way it was written just kept me engaged the entire time. I couldn't put it down. I read it very, very quickly and plan to read it again. And I think that it's the winning book, hands down. I think it's the most Canadian book we have.
All right. Brett, Natalie's unmuted, ready to go.
Yeah, this book was such an amazing way to bring together the current issues that we're dealing with, refugees being, how they're treated coming to Canada, historical racism that, there's one story of a Black man, and, what he has to deal with in the story is horrific and kind of comes from that history of slavery. It has the story of generational trauma experienced by Indigenous persons in Canada. And one of the stories is of an elder coming to support the community after a 7-year-old Indigenous girl dies. So it really brings together all of those stories into a very relatable, present problem in Canada that has to be dealt with, as people who care about their communities and who are capable of doing better for their communities. And I'm getting yelled at that my time is up.
That's what all caps means. Brett.
I'm going to take it one step farther and say this is the book all people in St. Albert should read, because this is a book about someone who's dealing with intergenerational trauma from residential schools, and St. Albert had 2 residential schools. So I think this is a great book if you're beginning your journey. As Kelsey said, if you know a few things but you're not too sure, this is a great book because it's centered on one person who you can go and learn more about and follow his story as it unfolds. But this is an action book. I really felt there was a pace in it, like the let's go. Like, this is the book on reflection being an action, and forgiveness being an action, and speaking your truth and listening to other people's truth. Those are all actions, right? Reconciliation is an action. And then it just ends on such a good action of hope for the future. So I think it does a great balance of balancing the truthfulness of what he went through and what his family went through, but then it's really balanced with a sense of hope for the future. And so I think that's something everyone who lives in St. Albert should read about.
All right, there you have it, everyone watching tonight. Everyone's made their case. They're all stopwatch offenders for sure, but I mean, what a compassionate and thoughtful bunch. You all did an amazing job, so I'm leaving it at there. Like, you're all winners to me, but let's find out. Let's put the poll up. So I'm going to flash that out to everyone, and yeah, take 30 seconds or so to vote. I know sometimes these things can be a little clunky, like if you're watching this on your phone and maybe the poll doesn't come up, you can just manually put your entry into the chat. But yeah, I'll launch it, and then we'll look at some prizes. So there it is, everyone. Give you about 30 seconds there. I'm going to whip up a little prize draw here. Ooh, I get live poll results. This is great. Great evening. Next year in person. Yeah, I think that's a thing, Victoria. This is a great, I mean, it's been great online, but this is awesome in person. I mean, anytime you have an audience live for something like this, oh, the best. Okay, things are slowing down. Did we miss anyone? Manual entry, folks. Okay, I think we're good. I'm gonna just put the poll down here. I'm gonna end it first. I don't want to lose this. That would suck. Okay. I'm gonna share my screen for the wheel of names. Ever seen the wheel of names? Let's check it out. All right. Oh no. I hope people did not see the winner there. Okay, so let's click the wheel of names. Let's see if there's a winner. Who's the winner of the winning book? Last names here. Bisson. All right. We have to go last name. So we will connect you to that prize. Let me stop the share here. Okay. So yeah, we will email you the winning book. I hope people didn't see the results flash up there for a second, because your winner is, where are my polls? Where's the results? That I got so many tabs open.
You're really good at the suspense thing. You should.
Yeah, I know.
Come on.
I'm gonna be touching
I want
the
to read all
screen
of
pretty
them.
soon.
Drum roll.
I know.
Yeah, I know. Okay, drum roll, Julian. The winner is Five Little Indians by Michelle Good, Kelsey Robbins. Thank you. Kelsey, we'd love to hear from you. You collected 11 of the 27 voting tonight. So yeah, close to a landslide there. Tell us how you feel.
I feel like I'm going to carry these bragging rights with me probably for the rest of my life. I did not win. Michelle Good won this for us. So I'm really excited to see her win it for all of Canada Reads. Good job, St. Albert. I'm thrilled.
Good job, St. Albert. Yes, good job to everyone. So I saw the name there, Bisson. We'll have to get the first name, but I'll check the registration sheet, because all of you that have registered and are here tonight, you're also entered to win another draw when you do your feedback forums, and that we'd love to hear from you to just win copies of the other books. So we do have a copy of each book. We'd like to get that into your hands. So tell us what you thought about tonight. And yeah, congratulations, Kelsey. Anyone else some closing thoughts on the evening? I'd love to hear from all of you before we wrap up tonight.
Yeah, it's my first time participating, and it was a lot of fun. I didn't know what to expect. I was wondering, I was totally kind of half prepared. I thought I was more prepared, but when I heard the answers and that people were giving, I was realizing I wasn't as good as prepared as I thought I was. But it was a really enjoyable evening, and I really appreciate it. And all the panelists, you guys did really well. And I want to thank you, Jeff, too. You did a great job.
Yeah, thank you all. I really enjoyed this evening. It was great.
Yeah, I would say this isn't a book I would necessarily pick. I procrastinated and didn't give my top kind of two choices, and Michelle just said like, oh, hey, do you want to read this book? And I said, sure.
Nice.
And it, I don't read a lot of memoirs and biographies, but it was good to try something different and read something different, and I very much enjoyed it, and I do recommend it to everyone. So maybe just encourage you to pick up a new book at the library that may be a genre you haven't thought you tried or you would like before. But I think a Kids Canada Read would be great.
Absolutely.
I'm down for that. If you guys do that, I think that's a great suggestion.
Yeah, I mean, we could really build this things up. We could do Kids Week. We could do YA Week. It could be just week after week of Canada Reads. Love it. Yeah, closing thoughts. Natalie.
Yeah, thanks again to Jeff and everyone. I really didn't know what to expect either. And I also really appreciate kind of being assigned a book that I don't think I would pick up on my own. I read a lot, and I usually don't want to pick up something that hurts. So,
I probably should have given Natalie my book, and you should have given me your book.
yeah. Well, I might want to go read yours now, anyways. So, and also, I want to give a shout out. This painting is from Marigold Santos. She's a brilliant Canadian Filipino artist, and I intentionally put her behind me here because of the themes. Really, that we've talked about today are reflected in her work. So I need to give that shout out.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, Kelsey, I forgot to mention, like, yeah, you can carry these bragging rights forever, but you're also welcome back next year as the defending champ.
You will see me.
We will see you. Okay, awesome. Panelists, thank you. Thanks for everything tonight. Just the way all you as individuals contribute to a connected and caring community. We thank you so much, because for the library, that is a healthy community. So we love working with you all when we get the chance to. So thank you for that. I have to say thanks to Louisa in the chat here. She's an amazing artist, a true reader. Like I mentioned, she's your reader services librarian. She's been doing it for over 30 years. Thank you so much, Louisa. Trevor Ty, who's IT, always on hand for stuff like this. CBC for donating books for the prize draws, and yeah, just having this awesome idea that we can like piggyback on and make this great event. And then everyone in the chat, you're all readers, so your appetite for more good books makes something like a battle of the books possible. So give yourselves a pat on the back. Yes, we will see you in person next year. I can't wait for that. Everyone, thank you so much. This was really fun. It was great seeing you. Can't wait to see you all in person. We'll leave it at that. Take care, everyone, and good night.
Good night, everybody.
Bye.